Sir Stephen Timms.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very pleased to follow the honourable member for Hazelgrove, and I pay tribute to the frankness of the personal remarks which he opened his speech. And I must say, the whole speech contained a great deal of good sense, which I hope his honourable friends on his front bench will have heard and paid attention to. Christians on the left organises a church service each year. On the Sunday morning, the Labour Party conference begins, and the preacher this year was the Archbishop of York. And in a very fine address he gave on that occasion, he said this, and I quote, "Increasingly, the safety net in our nation is a food bank, where more and more people have to go to get what our economy itself fails to provide." And he's absolutely right. Something fundamental has gone wrong in our economy. For many people, the economy doesn't work, including people who are in employment. More and more are turning to a food bank to survive. 61,000 food banks distributed by Trussell Trust Food Banks in 2010-11, 2.5 million in 2020-21, a 40-fold increase in a decade. The Prime Minister acknowledged in the leadership election campaign in the summer her party's failure on economic growth. She was absolutely right to do so. The new Chancellor told us on Monday that the record on growth had been very good, and that is one of many things which he and the Prime Minister seem to disagree about. But on this one, I'm definitely with the Prime Minister. As my right honourable friend on the front bench often points out, we are a high-tax economy because we've been a low-growth economy. Last April, social security benefits were raised by 3.1%, even though inflation was nearly 10%. And that was justified on the basis that the regular formula for uprating benefits uses the figure for inflation in the previous September. That formula has, on several occasions, been disapplied since 2010, but never in the interests of the poorest families in the country, only ever to their disadvantage. This year, the formula was applied, piling on yet another real terms cut in benefits, reducing them to the lowest real terms level for over 30 years. The then Chancellor and the then Prime Minister implicitly recognised that unfairness and promised to use the same formula next April, delivering, we've learnt today, a 10.1% rise then. Now the current Chancellor must decide whether to keep that promise to the poorest families in the country during a cost of living crisis. The Minister, in his opening remarks, referred to protecting the vulnerable. I really hope that he meant that, because those families have so often had a kicking from this government over the last 12 years. And if it happens again, food bank dependence is going to get yet another large boost as thousands more people have to turn to those food banks to survive, on top of the 700,000 households who did so in 2019-20. The food banks themselves are struggling now because donors can't afford to give as much. Mass food bank dependence is a potent symptom of the economic failure of the past 12 years. Yesterday, Muscular Dystrophy UK came to Parliament to spell out the hardship from rising prices for the people they support because, for example, they depend on machinery, ventilators, which have to be permanently switched on and powered. The Chancellor on Monday spoke of compassionate conservatism. If that isn't just a vacuous slogan, their needs must be recognised in the benefit uprating decision that will be announced on Monday week. The benefit cap was introduced 10 years ago and was supposed to reflect median earnings. It was changed once in 2016 when it was cut. It's never ever been increased. This time, surely it must be. Because if it isn't, at a time when inflation is over 10%, thousands more people are going to crash into the cap next April and be forced to depend on food banks, heaping yet another failure, another economic failure, on the catastrophic errors that we've seen, as the Honourable Member for Hazelgrove rightly pointed out, catastrophic blunders of the last few weeks.